reconsider. I'll have to look at the forecast. But generally speaking, unless there's some severe weather event, I will be there.
Okay, good, because we're recording now. Dan doesn't like to come to Toronto unless the conditions, Fred, are absolutely perfect. So I'm hoping Dan will come over on Monday. We don't have like a severe sun event. By the way, I don't want to get into the numbers, but I don't have the story in front of me, but there was a story about after the eclipse coming out of Quebec so far, and I'm sure it'll get more. There are 40 cases of a solar eclipse-related eye damage.
Really?
Here's the story. Optometrists across Canada believe the number is likely higher, but concede that not everyone reports their eye issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why Quebec?
Just so far. I don't know. Maybe it's across the country.
I'm just wondering why that's a story out of Quebec, like per capita or something.
No, just the story. The story. Maybe I read it incorrectly. 40 cases of solar eclipse related eye damage reported in Quebec so far. I'm sure there's reports across the country, but this particular story came from Quebec.
But they had a big sunny day in Montreal on the eclipse day.
Maybe that's why.
Because my son lives there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in the Niagara region. It was just, a cloudy mess.
Okay, so again, I just thought I'd throw it out there because the eclipse now was the big event and now in our rear view mirror. But there was some people who stared at the sun incorrectly.
So basically what you're saying is Quebecers are dumb.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple other quick headlines before we start the show. Did you guys see that they're thinking of raising the speed limit?
No.
Are they? I didn't.
Yes.
You mean on the 401 or something like that?
Yes. I don't have it in front of me, but I thought somebody would have heard it. I have it open.
Well, I can do some research.
No, I've got it here. Ontario raising speed limit on some up to, what is it? We're highway more than 250K of the 401, including around Kingston, Belleville. We'll see speed limit increases, 403 near Brantford, etc.
To what? 110?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if you guys were in Ontario when the major highways were 70 miles per hour.
Really?
That would have been back in the 70s. This is before we went to metric, obviously, but it was 70 miles an hour for cars, 60 for trucks. And I was working for a car dealership at the time, and I was doing a dealer trade, which is, you drive a car to one dealership and grab a different one and bring it back. And I was driving a truck back, and I was going down the 400, and a cop pulled me over. And he gave me a ticket. And I looked at the ticket and I said, this can't be right. And he goes, oh, yeah, this is a truck. This is a pickup truck. So I was doing like 80. So instead of being 10 over, I was 20 over. Isn't that funny how this stuff comes back to mind?
Well, last week I drove through 3 or 4 states there and it took me a second. I know it's going to sound like I'm dumb. Maybe I am now.
You're like a Quebecer.
Where I saw the speed limit posted at 70. And for just a second, I was like, "That doesn't seem fast enough," because I was thinking in the kilometers. But for most of that ride through the I-79, West Virginia into the Carolinas, there it's 70.
Well, the flow on the 401's 130.
Yeah, well, easily.
Yeah, so it's okay. So they're going to make it 110, and I don't know how many people you really got to be charging to be stopped on the 401 for speeding. I mean, really.
You know what that number is, by the way? 50K.
What is?
It's interesting. You thought that because one of the things I was going to bring up here is that there's a charge of it's called stunt driving.
Right. 50K over.
50K over. A driver can be hit with a
car right there. Yeah.
Say again.
I'm sorry. They can impound the car right there on the highway at 50 over.
The government said that on the certain sections with in sections with an increased speed limit to 110, 150K will still be considered the threshold for stunt driving.
Yeah, $10,000 fine.
Okay, truth time. Have you ever gone 150K?
I don't know. I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think so.
No.
I have briefly on the 407. Yeah, well, only because I with this goddamned electric car of mine, Dan. But in the last year, I was on the 407 at some point, and I was doing like regular speed, 120, 125. And then I went to pass somebody and, stomped on the accelerator. And I looked down at 1 second because it surprised me. I was doing like 147, 150. I was like, what? Because that car, it accelerates at such a pace. It's hard to believe you got to that speed that quickly.
Yeah.
You turned into a teenager driving.
Oh, yeah. That's right. My pubic hair turned from gray back to...
It would... It would be pretty much impossible for me to do that because I have a governor in the car.
Yeah, what's her name? Oh, I'm sorry, that's a governess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about driving with your electric car when you're on your long road trips there. Does it make any, the gas mileage goes down when you go really fast? You use up way more gas, per kilometer or whatever. Does the same kind of thing happen with your charge? Like the faster you go, or is it just doesn't matter?
I wish I had an answer for you. My instinct is to say yes, but I don't have a 100% answer. If I know that temperature affects the battery efficacy. In colder temperatures, the colder it is, the estimates of what your range will go down. As far as speed goes, Dan, I don't know.
Okay.
All right. Well, there's a good little pre-show there. That wasn't even part of the show. That was just a little bonus for people that tuned in early. And now the real program will begin as it does.
This episode of Humble and Fred is being broadcast to the world from our state-of-the-art Humble and Fred studio in Toronto, from our Brampton facility with a soon-to-be-open pool, and from Lisa's dining room table next to trendy black sticks in a vase. I'm Dan Duran, broadcasting live from the Insert Your Name Here Zoom Theater, and brought to you by the Retirement Sherpa, the Chambers Plan, Boron One, Bodog, and Lender's Choice Mortgages. And now, here are two men who, when the sun shines to start a beautiful day, show gratitude to Gord, because now they don't have to complain about the weather and can move on and complain about other trivial things. It's Humble and Fred.
Let's take care of a couple things before we get into the main part of the program. We've been waiting way too long. And I don't know, we got out of the habit of acknowledging our sponsors in the first quarter of the program, but I thought of that. I was going to bring it up before the show, but we had a very intense discussion of the Leafs, and then we morphed into some guest preparation. But, Freddie, why don't we take a second before we get into some emails, or actually, we're going to get into one email, and, one and a half, really, and we're going to announce the winner of the email of the week, and next week, Dan Duran you say this person's name every day as part of the Insert Your Name Here theater. But first, Freddie, let's talk about the wonder that is the Retirement Sherpa, if we can. I think it's important to get some of these sponsors up front in the program because we never do.
Yeah, Tim's a portfolio manager. Tim Niblett is a portfolio manager. Raymond James, a member of the Canadian Investors Protection Fund. He was by yesterday. We were talking about the 25 best places on earth to retire. And, a lot of, as he explained, a lot of people are in a situation when they retire, they don't necessarily want to stay in Canada, or an American doesn't want to stay in the U.S. or whatever. And there are options around the world that are very retirement friendly. And we went down the list, and it was very interesting. Something to think about. Another point we made on the show yesterday, if you have a portfolio and you're not quite sure it's performing to the level that it should, Tim or Sherpa Jay Bondi will have a look at it and let you know what they think. Are you on track? Are you not on track? And no strings attached. They'll give you the straight goods. The Retirement Sherpa, retirementsherpa.ca.
Very well said. Let's also acknowledge, and I know you're going to talk about the Leafs a little bit, I'm sure, when it comes to the odds set for Game 4. But if you're thinking about sports gambling or betting, think no further than our friends, Bodog.
Feeling caught in a neutral zone? When things start to go offside, you know it's time to play. It's easy to find your next favorite game at Bodog.net. Check out the latest sports odds and get free tips to help you score this hockey season. Visit Bodog.net today. #Make a play.
Very good. Hey, quickly, you were talking about the Sherpas. It was a list about the 25 best places in the world to retire.
Yeah.
And I saw a list this morning. A very strange list. It's North America's best bars, and that includes, in North America, Dan, Mexico, which you may have forgotten is part of North America. But
thanks for bringing that back.
I just want to make sure you're following along at home.
When does Central America start?
7 Canadian bars landed in the list of North America's best bars. But that's not what I found fascinating. In the top 10 best bars in North America, according to this list, number 1 is a place called Handshake Speakeasy in Mexico City. Number 5 is a place in Mexico City. Number 9 is a place in Mexico City. And number 10, 4 of the top 10 bars, Daniel, are bars in Mexico City. I've never been to any of them. Freddie, have you ever been to a bar in Mexico City?
Bar per se, no. But what's the criteria?
I don't know. I don't have any of those details. I just have the list. I apologize.
I've been to Mexico City. Wonderful city.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed. I mean, the section I stay in, it's not, people aren't living on garbage heaps, but
there's 4 million people living on a garbage dump. Yeah.
Well, driving into Mexico City is it's frightening.
Yeah.
Well, not frightening. It's startling because of the poverty that you can see, and then you drive into the city, and it's like any other thriving.
It's like being in Europe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'll only mention there's one bar. The first bar from Canada is a place in Toronto I've never been to, but maybe Dan Durant and all your, coolness. Civil Liberties is the bar in Vancouver or in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
You never heard
Civil?
of it. Civil Liberties. Civil Liberties. Anyway,
I'm sorry. Was that with a V or a B? Civil?
Yes, like as a legal thing, like civil liberties.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I get it.
And I only brought it up because I was reminded of it because of the Sherpa list. So quickly, let's get to an email. We had a lot of emails. We did the emails yesterday because we are having the Trump guy on today, and so we made a programming change.
What time is he supposed to check in?
Usual time, okay. 8:15 Eastern.
All right.
You got all your questions ready on a card or something?
No, well, I don't know. It's gonna be more providing a platform. It's gonna be more listening than talking, I would think, right, Howie?
Well, to start with, we had a quick meeting before we hit record. What's our we've been leading up to this for some time. Mm-hmm. This isn't the first person I've reached out to, and we've had this conversation on the show. Wouldn't it be great to talk to somebody who's irrational, like not a crazy MAGA person, but just somebody that seems rational and could explain to us?
Again, not to get too deep in this, but this is almost a worldwide revolution, including Canada, where a lot of people are turning right, and it's startling. A lot of countries around the world, for whatever reason. This is just another example. And, some of the leaders, some of the guys at the top of these right-wing governments are, they're not much nicer than Trump. It's quite a phenomenon.
Well, as Ralph Ben-Mergy pointed out the other day, Benjamin Netanyahu has been Trump before Trump. He's a right-winger, hardline right-winger, 15 years of rule. It's a universal issue. What did you say the other day? I thought was very, very apt about the left wing has driven the right.
Oh yeah. Far left and woke is driving the middle right, and it just is. And it's happening again. Here we sit in Canada. It's happening here. Look at the latest polls. How do you explain that? I mean, Alex Jones has endorsed Pierre Poilievre, and he hasn't rejected that endorsement. But just think how crazy that is.
Oh, yeah.
And not even a blip in the polls for Poilievre. He's still leading the way.
So, given what you said on, and I believe it, and we could talk for up from now until the guy comes on the show about why that is, the backlash against the left. And Dan,
Yes.
on the political spectrum, you're further left. I'm a little less left, more in the middle, and probably more conservative. And Fred might be a little right of me, but still pretty liberal. All three of us are pretty liberal.
Right.
Overall, I mean,
We're not on the nobody's on the get rid of government spectrum, and nobody's on, we shouldn't.
No.
Listen, I've talked to you two extensively over my lifetime and never heard anybody use the phrase deep state. Like, no one is deep stating one another.
Yeah, I know. It's again, I keep looking at my kids. You can look at your kids, my kids in their 30s, getting established in life. What has the current Canadian government done for them? Nothing. And I think that's ringing across the country. Nothing is being done for me, so maybe I'll try that guy.
Right.
That's the phenomenon.
And that was going to be my point, of the three of us on whatever political spectrum we have been. And we've all known each other since, before we had, not you, but... we've known each other basically since before we had mortgages and had to become responsible and take our, place in the fucking society. But I can see why somebody might become disgruntled and distrust and, discouraged, a lot of other things with the current state of affairs. What I want to talk to this guy about is, okay, if that's what it was for you, maybe it isn't. But a lot of those MAGA people were what you said. They were they were driven to this by a lot of different circumstances. I want to start with this guy by saying, okay, tell us what you were before Trump came along, and then explain to me how this guy's your guy. Because this guy seems to me like the kind of guy that is smart enough to know that Trump's not. He's a flawed human being, to say the least. Anyway.
Yeah. And then, that's the way to go. I get it. Yeah. It's the way to go because everybody has a story. And, we'll probably be able to figure out pretty quickly, what this guy's all about. And again, if he's just a guy like in his 40s, did you say?
Yeah, I think so.
A guy in his 40s with a couple of kids and a house and a mortgage and trying to make his way, and again, he feels like he's getting left behind. Well, people look for alternatives.
Go ahead, Dan.
Pertinent to this conversation, I sent you, both of you, a speech that Mark Carney, the former Bank of Canada governor, was giving. It's a long thing, so it's not appropriate for right now, but basically he's said this. When politicians like Pierre Poilievre claim our great democracies are broken, it's not because they want to fix them, it's because they want the license to demolish, which kind of, I think is true. He's a liberal, Mark Carney, in my estimation, my understanding. But, it does make sense that that's exactly what, they are doing in the States as well, is we just want to, blow up the system because it's not working. But there's no, let's fix it, let's do this to it. It's just blow it up. Yeah. And that's a big part of the problem. He was also referencing what happened in Brexit. And that's kind of what happened in Britain as well.
Yeah. And what I was going to say, there's always been political discourse. There's always been people that disagreed. And there's always been movements that, seemed hysterical at the time. And we all got over it. But, I was trying to explain to somebody the other day. They asked me, what do we talk about on the show? I love that question because it's always like, what do you guys talk about? And I said, well, sometimes, Dixon shit. And on the other spectrum, on the other end of that, we get pretty serious at times, maybe in a way that an old Humble and Fred listener wouldn't recognize.
Right. What concerns me about, and again, part of what Dan just said is, a guy like Polyev, and again, I'm still putting him through the wash. They give conservatism a bad name because there are people like Dan, and Dan, you can deny it all you want. Conservative bad. They don't even want to listen to what a conservative has to say. It's just that the whole movement, conservatism, they want to reject. Well, if that's ever going to grow, you know what I mean? You can't have whack jobs at the top because it just gives the whole thing. What it does is it validates what people think about the right when you have these guys leading them.
Yeah, but what comes first? What comes first, to your point? What comes first? You have a predisposed idea of what a conservative candidate is or isn't, and then that person comes along, you go, aha, see?
Right.
No matter what they say, they're in that. And I'm not using just you, Dan. It's the same with liberals. Like you might be anti-liberal and all this fuck Trudeau stuff, and not even. Pardon?
It bugs us,
and not even give whatever the guy's saying the time of day because we are already predisposed. So let's put that away now because we've got this guy's coming up. I want to mention that all next week. The email of the week recipient will be given an honor to be, and maybe Dan, once we announce this person, maybe you could give us kind of a sense of what that's going to sound like when you say, "I'm Dan Duran, live from this person's name theater." Okay.
Oh, right.
Okay. So let's go through this.
Doing that right now, then. Okay.
No, I have to give you the person's name.
All right. What's the person?
All right. Well, first.
Hi, guys. Hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Dear humble down Fred.
This comes from one of our most regular and devoted contributors who is always thoughtful, often very funny, and certainly a big Humble and Fred fan. I'm imagining a super Hundy P, and she begins her emails with,
Hi, guys.
A lot of the time, she sends an email for Dan, and then there's an attachment to it.
Hi, guys. Just finishing listening up to today, April's pod. And, it's just so funny. I just need to share with you how you guys actually factor into everyday life. So I'm literally at the part in the show where you're talking about non-alcoholic drinks and the price of things. I had to run into Rexall. I go in, they sell non-alcoholic beer. So I saw the Coors Edge. I don't really care at all, whatever. If it's non-alcoholic, I'll drink it. Coors Edge, regularly $10.99. And this particular 6-pack had a $3 off coupon because they've rebranded into a cardboard box from the little plastic circle things. So there you go. $10.99 regular price for Coors Edge. And I also just want to share, Howard, when you have a conversation with Ralph Benmergui, you come from a place of passion and honesty and heartfelt, genuine emotion. And Ralph is definitely on a higher level. Like you talk about your brother being super smart, Ralph is beyond unbelievable smart and well-versed and well-read. So it was a really, really good conversation. And I just thought it was so fascinating how Ralph was always able to bring you back to a different perspective. Mind you, your emotion gets the better of you and you tend not to always hear him. So having said that, I'm really glad that you know him very well and he knows you very well, because that conversation could have easily become quite heated, but it was excellent. It's always a pleasure when he's on the show. Please keep having him come back, and I'm addicted to his pod too. Have a great day, guys.
So there you have it, our very first, well, it's not the first email of the week we've ever done, but it will be the first in this incarnation where the recipient will receive honor as the studio naming rights for the following week.
So that's Jennifer Kelly, then.
That is Jennifer Kelly. So, Dan Duran, I'll give you a little bit of the theme, but give us an idea. Give us a flavor of what this is going to sound like for people in the weeks to come, so they may be incentivized or whatever to be part of this.
I'm Dan Duran, broadcasting live from the Jennifer Kelly Zoom Theater, and brought to you by.
I love it.
Be you here.
So do it again, Dan. It was so beautiful.
All right. I'm Dan Duran, broadcasting live from the Jennifer Kelly Zoom Theater.
Wow. Okay. Come on. Tell me that's not going to give her a boner.
Oh. Hey, nowadays you never know. You never know.
Well, girls can get boners.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Not literal boners, but they can get boners. By the way, this just in the news, I saw this. U.S. may ban TikTok, but they will be keeping Titcock. So,
oh, well, of course.
just trying to inject some levity into the show.
That's a Canadian subsidiary, because
right.
Canada's known for the porn sites.
Oh yeah. So yes, headlines, Dan. U.S. bans tit. U.S. bans tit. I can't even say it now. TikTok keeps Titcock.
Now you'll never be able to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
What a great opportunity for somebody. That maybe we should put our minds to work that way.
Oh yeah.
Well, if they ban TikTok, that doesn't mean you can't have something similar, homegrown, or is there something like that already?
I don't know.
You know what? I don't like. So TikTok, it's just like an app, like any other app you would have on your phone, and then
imagine Twitter.
Yeah,
it's more. I'm sorry, it's just Instagram a little bit quicker. It's just Instagram without. Mm-hmm. It's just more Instagrammy. It's like there's a thing called Reels on Instagram. So Instagram is pictures. TikTok is just videos.
Do you have an OnlyFans account, Howard?
No, I don't, but Stan does.
And the thing Stan does.
Oh my God, I'm telling you right now, he's always up there in front of his video, showing off, doing some dog stuff.
Did you hear Kanye West is talking about launching a porn studio?
Why not?
Why not? You know, he's very religious, and you'd think that wouldn't be the first thing that he'd want to do, but apparently,
yeah,
he's
but
very religious.
Dan has something called Only Dan's page, where Dan, it's just for other guys named Dan. It's an Only Dan's page.
An Only Dan.
Well, there's
Only
a lot
Dan's.
of them.
Oh yeah.
I love that Kanye West. He's a religious guy. Is he?
Well, he likes to think of himself as that.
Mm-hmm. That's like on Fox News. All the female news providers or bullshit providers, they all have open neck with a necklace and a cross.
Oh, yeah?
Notice that. Oh, yeah, all of them. And meanwhile, they're saying all these vile, horrible things about people and lying through their teeth. But they all have their nice little cross and their necklace. Funny world. Funny world.
Yeah, I was having this religious conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and I said, it's interesting that all the fundamental, the really fundamental parts of any religion, the ones that are just the super crazies, I said, there's nothing fun about them, and they're mostly mental. There's no fun in fundamental. It's just mostly mental. Like anytime you see Kenneth Copeland talking about his fucking jets and stuff, is Dan frozen? I can't tell.
I'm just listening in my own way.
Honestly, right there, I thought, okay, his screen is frozen because he's just blinking at me. So, sorry, Dad. So you didn't like that? There's no fun in fundamental because they don't seem to be having any fun at all, but they do seem a bit mental. I don't know, Dan. It's not the best joke I've ever done, but I thought you were.
I'm sorry. I was just thinking about things. And
what were you thinking about there during that piece of comedy?
I was thinking about opening up a porn studio.
You were still back there.
How would that work?
With you,
how easy is it to do?
All it would have to be is just a camera on your dink 24/7.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
What I don't understand, you have all these like Pornhub and what's the other one, YouPorn, and they provide all this free material. And I know, Howard, you had a spin on this, and part of that is a lot of these sites, they put little clips on those ones so that you'll subscribe to the longer ones, and it's like there's a business there, like. Somebody's actually beyond Pornhub and porn and YouPorn. Somebody's actually going to pay money for content beyond that. Like, what do you need?
Yeah, how much do you need? How much stimulation do you need?
It's weird.
Yeah, I had a bit.
It really is weird.
My spin or my bit was like, I don't understand why they even make new porn. I can't get through the porn they've already made. And I'm pretty sure, given the numbers I've seen, I mean, I'm putting up some impressive numbers by myself, but I don't think there's enough time in my life to go through all the porn that's already produced. But, Fred, you know, there are those links to pay sites, and you wonder, how do you... What's going on with you that you can't just... There's not enough free porn for you to view.
Yeah, like I don't... Like, what is that a gateway to? Like,
oh yeah, what's behind that gate?
So this clip you just saw for this clip you just saw for 7 or 8 minutes. You want the 60-minute version? Like
yeah, listen.
Where they actually act, you get to see them act.
I'm impressed by the fact you can get past 7 or 8 minutes. What's the other 4.5 for?
Yeah.
But even more so, what is, when you said that, what's behind that gate? What's that a gateway to? In going from free to premium? I don't know.
Although honestly, I got to tell you, those sites, they make me feel sad. Like when I'm in a peeler bar, I just feel sad for the women, and I don't know why. But anyway, the last time I was there...
What about the animals? Do you feel sad for them? Do you feel sad for the donkeys, too?
I did go to YouPorn to look at Stormy Daniels. Have you caught any of that act?
I'm sorry. Are you saying that you just went to YouPorn for research now?
Yes, probably. Yeah, the last time, yes.
Wow.
Because I wanted the Stormy Daniels. I thought, would she be on one of these sites? And bang, you just do it, and it's like, wow. Yeah, she does it.
Isn't that the name of one of her...
You really got to go.
Isn't that the name of one of her videos? Bang, and you just do it?
Yeah, I guess.
You know, I am really trying to bring some levity to this program. Meanwhile, this guy's telling me he's going to fucking Pornhub for research purposes. Dan, what do you go to it for?
Research purposes, for sure. You know, now that we're talking about it on the air, we could actually subscribe to it and write it off as a business expense because, you know, it is a business. We did research.
Goddamn, yeah, it is.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Subscribe to what, though? Subscribe to what?
To the whole version of the experience, so that you get the narrative. You know, sometimes in those clips they just skip past the, you know, the opening, the setup where. You know, the person's in the office and another person comes along. And,
yeah, guys, I think it's been a while. I think it's been a while since there have been plots to these things. I don't think there's a whole lot of acting going on anymore.
But Howard, I saw a documentary, and it was something about talking to former porn stars, a couple of the big ones or whatever, and they showed this one. There was these half a dozen of these porn stars sitting around, and they were all pissed off because they weren't getting to act enough. It's like, when I was told that, you know, I came to this studio, I would be able to, you know, do some acting as well. It's like, okay. So what's the idea? You act, and then, you know, you do whatever on screen, and then you hope, like, Steven Spielberg's just going to happen to see you or something.
Yeah. That's right. Spielberg's going to say, and you know, hey, just before you got cummed on by 10 guys, that little moment, just before in that Bukkake video where you were reading the news, just before.
Has there ever been a porn star that crossed over and became a real star, like a non-porn star?
I think Marilyn Chambers, famously, really? Yes, I think she ended up in some small roles. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm pretty sure she did. I only know her from her porn work myself.
Yeah, Deep Throat, right?
No, that's not Marilyn Chambers. That's Linda Lovelace.
That was Linda Lovelace.
Yeah, Marilyn Chambers was behind the green door.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. Where you never saw that? She makes love, and I say that with quotations. She makes love to several gentlemen in this pornographic film on a pool table.
Right.
Which is behind the green door?
I don't know what the green door significance is, Dan. I never paid attention.
You just watched the clips, but they'd watch the whole thing.
That's right.
You didn't get the narrative.
I didn't get the whole... I didn't... Yeah, right. You're good point. I never got the whole scenario. I didn't get the subtle nuances of why they were behind a green door.
Yeah. Anyway, that's part of the reason I feel sad. Because when you, a lot of, especially years ago, women dragged through that. It never usually ended up well. But it is what it is, isn't it, fellas? It is what it is. I mean, I was driving up, what was it the other day, Airport Road? There's still peeler bars. Do people still go to those? It's like, it's weird.
Yeah, I think the same thing when I see them. I'd be honest with you, and I love you like a brother, but I don't feel sad. I feel other things, but sad isn't one of them. I mean, if I think about it, when now you've ruined porn for me. What's next? Can't drink, can't smoke weed. What's next? No more porn. Hey, listen, before we get to this, dude, I want to mention, I mentioned it yesterday on the show, and we never played it. Dan, there used to be a thing, is there still a thing called the ESPYs? Fred? Do they still do that?
I think so, Howard. I think so, yes. I think so.
Well, I thought because we talked a lot about Norm Macdonald and his legendary OJ jokes. And you think, okay, well, he used to just do it in the safety of Weekend Update and famously got fired for it. But here's a 20-second clip. So imagine this. It's like 1998 or something. And he's hosting the ESPYs in front of the biggest athletes in sports. It's like the Oscars for athletes, Dan.
Right. I just looked it up.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So
going on.
You want to talk about the balls on this guy, which, by the way, is also a porn title. In fact, everything's a porn title.
I saw that, the balls on this guy.
Did you feel sad?
No, because it was a guy.
Okay.
Hey, did you mention this was like 1998? Like 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years after.
Yeah. Okay.
So imagine this guy's just the fucking courage to do this joke in front of a predominantly athletic audience, lots of black people in the audience, and Norm Macdonald's on stage.
And there's Charles Woodson. How about that? What a season he had. Great, man. He became the first defensive player to win the Heisman Trophy. And congratulations, Charles. That is something that no one can ever take away from you. Unless you kill your wife and a waiter, in which case...
No one can ever take it away from you unless you kill your wife and a waiter. Holy fuck. And I want to thank one of our listeners, where is it right here, who sent us as an email. It was from John Leb. So thank you, John.
You got to love that about Norm, because it's not like he was thinking, I'm going to do this and it'll help me make more money or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I'm going to do this and it'll be my thing and I'll, skyrocket to the top or something. He knew how, that was, he knew how contentious that could be. And he didn't care.
Yeah, that's really the difference between him and a lot of, when you've heard this phrase when they say, oh, he's a comics comic or whatever. And usually what that means, and our friend has just entered the waiting room. Usually what that means is what you just described. Doing a joke, that you just think it's funny, but it's not going to be it could be disastrous, and yet you still fucking do it. All right, let me just tell this fellow to stand by, and Dan, you'll hopefully favor us with your news today. Let me see.
I'll be back.
Dan will be back, and... listening to this riveting interview. Let me just get his email here. Jason Rohrbach. Jason, it's funny because he's got two names here. One is Jay Thomas. Let me just get this figured out. Yeah. There he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have any music picked out.
Play that music that Trump always dances to.
Yeah, what is that? 11? No, what? It's
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, just the dancing always kills me, man.
It's
It's when you think about, when you see Obama dancing compared to that. He's signing on, but I don't see his face yet. Do you see it yet? There we go. There we go. There he is, Jason. Jason's just let me make sure you can hear us. Can you hear us okay?
I can.
All right. I was trying to think of some music to play for you. How about some Jason, and can just give me a level?
I'm sorry?
Just give me a level. Let me hear your voice a little bit.
Oh, yeah, sure. No problem. How's that?
Here we go. Here we go. In case you don't know, Jason, the name of this song is Living in America. And it's a famous song by one of my favorites, James Brown.
Love James Brown.
According to our producer, it says Jason's been listening and knows your thoughts on Trump, but he's assured you just want to have a talk and have no tricks up your sleeve. And that is true. I mentioned to the audience and gave some context on how you and I met and how for quite some time we've been looking for someone like you, someone that seemed reasonable that could have a conversation with us Canadians who are fairly aware of American politics. And listeners to our show would laugh when I say that, because Fred and I spend an inordinate amount of time talking about U.S. politics, way more than Canadian politics, because frankly, it's kind of boring. And what happens in the United States, I mean, really affects Canada on so many levels. So that's why we're drawn into it more than an American would be drawn into Canadian politics, which would be zero. Yeah, I was going to say, you've been listening to the show, so you know that, we don't just talk about Trump. We talk about, nonsense. Really, a good... Nonsense. I was going to say, if you've heard even an hour of this shit, you know that a lot of it is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. But, when we do delve into the Trump thing, it gets quite, can get serious, and a lot of it is inexplicable. So where we would like to begin is give us a little background about who you are, your age, family, and all that, where you live. And then we'd kind of like to go from there to, where you were before there was Trump and how you got to here. Is that reasonable to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. And, by all means, this is your show. If you have tricks, I'm not opposed to tricks.
We got nothing.
I'd just like to know, if I end up getting railroaded, it'll be fun anyway.
No, so, I promise. Listen, dude, we've had people on this show where it's devolved into us shouting at each. We're not interested. Freddie and I have wanted for some time to talk to somebody who can explain to us what we think is inexplicable. So let's just start with, who are you? What do you do? Where do you live?
Of course. Well, so I've always been, I live in northern Indiana, grew up here. In my growing up, I'm in a kind of what I feel like is an ideal place in the country, because I'm about 2 or 3 hours away from Toledo, same with Chicago, same with Indianapolis, same with Detroit. So in a day, I can get anywhere, and we can, anytime we want to go and experience a different culture other than our isolated little Midwest comfortable area, it's easy to do. I always enjoyed growing up and taking a trip to Chicago, just because you get to see the way the rest of the world lives, and that kind of culture. You're immersed in it, and it's fun. It was eye opening to see the way the rest of the world lives. So I always took advantage of that and liked it and loved it. I grew up primarily being with my growing up with my single mother. I had visitation with my dad, so like a lot of people now, I mean, that's the common thing now, but back then in the 70s, it wasn't necessarily. we were pretty poor. I just didn't necessarily know it. I was always just kind of a content, go with the flow kind of guy. And as I got older and became aware of politics, I suppose, we had a governor for a long time, Evan Bayh in Indiana. And he was a nice guy. He was a good guy. And I didn't care when I got to the age of 15, 16. It didn't matter that he was a Democrat. Back then, politics were so different. You guys know it was just different. There wasn't much real difference between the two. If there were Republicans running the state or Democrats running the state, the only thing people really cared about is, well, he's a nice guy. So, it's different. The qualifications are different. So here, when people that are rising up and becoming, getting noticed because of not being a nice guy, it's still it still grates against my original feeling of what a politician should be like. So it always makes you think. But times are different, and there's different things at stake. It seems. I don't like that the country, our country, and the world, it seems, is more polarized. There's very little gray area. There seems to be very little middle ground for people to compromise on, because you're on one side, people are on one side looking at the other side like, well, they're the devil, so I can't compromise with the devil.
No, exactly.
And then the other side looks at the other one and thinks the same thing. So right. Who's the devil? Well, I don't know. Is there a middle ground to be found anymore?
But just to answer so that gives us some background. But prior to Donald Trump, no, it's great. I appreciate you talking. So, Jason, prior to Donald Trump, would you have, because you're in your early 40s now, right? Mid 40s?
Late 40s.
Late 40s. Okay. Well, you're talking to two guys that are, seriously, we're just, the end is near for the two of us. But so you're in your mid to late 40s. Would you call yourself a lifelong Republican, or were you a lifelong Democrat before that?
No, I ever since the first time I could vote, I always mixed my vote. So I wasn't. I consider myself more a conservative, more a libertarian,
right?
By the way I think and believe. But if a Democrat was on the ballot today that I believed in and could stand behind, I would have no problem pulling the.
So you're not a hard line.
That's a good jump-in point that you believed in. Why? And again, mostly we'll just ask you questions, obviously, rather than make our big statements. Why do you believe in Donald Trump?
And this is, I get it. It's hard to understand. It is a matter of, I don't know. You could go with one quote that says the lesser of two evils. Another one, Thomas Sowell says there's no solutions, only trade-offs. Mm-hmm. So I got to go with what is the closest thing to my beliefs. And you can't choose someone unless you know what you believe. What do I believe? I believe in pro-liberty, pro-capitalism, pro-legal immigration. I'm all for immigration, but can you do it legally? Everybody else has this. This country is all about immigration, but it's all about legal immigration. So, but we, as soon as you say that, you're thrown out into a box where you're a racist and you're anti-Hispanic or something like that, and it's just not true. I'm pro keeping a positive GDP for our country by staying competitive in world markets, pro term limits for politicians, anti-war, anti-free passes for congressional insider trading, anti-spying on American citizens without a warrant. Those things. Who stands for those things? we don't have a lot of options. It happens to be a guy who runs his mouth too much, who talks out his ass half the time. but who else is there? Give me a Democrat who believes in those things, stands for those things. I'd consider voting for him. But we don't have that right now.
But let me say, as Fred, let me ask you this question. Because, and by the way, the thing that I really resonated with in your list was term limits for politicians. Like, I've had that conversation with him. We've talked about it. I just find that whether it's Canadian or American politics, how you get these people in there for life, these congressmen and senators that go in with making 180 grand a year, and then 4 years later they're all worth 20 million.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you, given your list, do you really not think that the Democrats also want those things?
I don't think so. I mean, look at Joe Biden. He's exactly what you just described. He's been in politics how long?
His whole life. No, absolutely.
50 years.
Yeah.
50 years.
Life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I know.
So he's the example of what you just said you agree with, of you know what I mean? So
I know.
Give us some other guys. Okay. Somebody rising up. How is it? This is what I don't understand. How is it that out of all the people in the United States, we don't have anybody younger than 70?
No, I know.
Who's running for this top seat in American politics? I don't get it. Somebody's pulling strings here that are beyond my pay grade. And what do? You guys wanted to know about me? I'll tell you about me. I get up and go to work every day. I don't have time for protest. It's not that I don't believe in it. It's not that I don't have feelings or things that I would love to go protest. But I have responsibility. I have 4 kids. So I cannot speak for other conservatives. I cannot speak for other people from even northern Indiana. All I do, I get up and go to work every day.
So let's jump in now.
Where I would jump in here is, I mean, there are primaries. Like, I mean, yeah, you have these 70-year-old guys, but, you know, the citizens decided that's who they wanted somehow, these 2 guys. I know, crazy as it seems, we can't believe it. You know, we have a guy in Canada right now called Pierre Poilievre, and it's sort of the same profile where a lot of people that we maybe were left in the middle are now turning right because they're so sick of far-left bullshit. What would concern me, and does it concern you? Trump is like a train coming down the tracks. Like, you talk about term limits. Are you not afraid that this guy will get in again and stay in, or try to stay in?
Stay in? How old is he? He's going to be dead in 5 years.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. I'm talking about the principle. Stay in and then hand off to his son, or whatever that may entail. And again, what we saw on January 6th, that would be like my question. You know, whatever you want to say about Democrats and Joe Biden, what we saw on January 6th, I mean, we saw it with our own eyes. We saw him say, this wasn't hearsay and this wasn't media. The man stood up and did what he did in such a horrible day for the country. How is that not enough for patriotic Americans to reject this guy? That's what I can't understand.
It's hard to navigate because what do we have? What you saw, what I saw, I wasn't sitting around watching TV that day or listening to podcasts. I was at work. And that's what I do every day. So what do I have? I have from January 6th up until now to catch these bites of what happened that day.
Right.
Everything from the hangman's noose being erected to
hang Mike Pence
bombs to people waving flags with masks on. And I'll tell you, the first thing I think is, I'm like, what conservatives are running around with masks on, hiding their face? In general, conservatives don't do that. And so as the trickle down of okay, this little fact comes out, this little fact is found out. One of those is that it's become a known fact that there were feds integrated in with the Trump protesters, Trump supporters, whatever. Did I even consider going to such a thing? No.
I'm going to stop you there, Jason. If I may interject, I'm going to stop you right there, because one of the questions we wanted to ask you, again, not to go point counterpoint, but it's provable that that's not a fact. I'm curious where you got that information from, because one of the questions we wanted to ask you is, in general, where do you get, at the end of a day that Jason goes to work, and you're just like everyone else. You want to feed your family, you want to take care of your world, but at the end of the day, where do you get information from that you believe that those facts, that it was a peaceful protest that day, for instance?
For instance, I mean, I'd like to have a balance, somewhat on the media that I intake, anywhere from NPR, PBS. I'm a fan of it. Even a show like you guys, I wasn't aware until we had started chatting of your program, but I will be taking it in when I can. I mean, when I'm on the road, I'm driving, I don't generally listen to podcasts. I'm typically turning on tunes or something.
Right. But are you a Fox News? Do you imbibe any Fox News is my question.
All I get is maybe little bites of some of that stuff from X.
And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because the way you talk about January 6th, the other big talking point in the conservative culture, zeitgeist, whatever you have it, is the election was rigged. So Fox paid, I don't know, $800 million or $750 million fine to a Dominion Securities, one of those companies, and there's still a lawsuit in place where they basically spread false information to the American public, which has been proved in 60 plus, court cases. There was no stolen election. The issue I have with, what you're saying about January 6th is, it's what people say about this election. They still, this man to this day still claims the election was stolen, even though all those people around him know it wasn't. So how do you respond to that?
Well, my response is that I don't know. I would tend to agree that after all this examination, all the court cases, that it wasn't. Is it wrong for him to say that or think that? Not any more wrong than it was for Hillary Clinton to say that her election was stolen in 2016.
It's completely different, because maybe she did for a day, for a week, for a month. But to this day, this guy, my question would be then, how do you trust somebody?
I don't trust any of them.
No, I get it. But how do you put your faith? How would you put your faith in someone who is so narcissistic and so immature that he can't let this false narrative go, even though the election was free and fair? Doesn't that worry you at all, a little bit?
Well, there's a lot, but that's one of a dozen things that concern me about Trump. I am not, and I know you gotta frame me as something, and I am the Trumper, but I am not behind Trump in this cultish kind of fashion that a lot of people from the left think that, well, the only way someone can be behind Trump is if they are a part of the Trump cult. I'm not.
That's a fair point.
The shit about him as a person. I do know that in one form or another, he's going to be out of the picture in 5 or 6 years. Because he's just so old. And why the hell do we have somebody so old? But again, it comes down to those points. What? Give me a list of the presidents in my lifetime, in my parents' lifetime, that were not that didn't start a war or were not heavily invested in war. There's only one. It was Donald Trump. all that fear mongering that was done prior to his election in 2015, 2016, that he is going to enter us in World War III. He is going to make all these foreign relations crumble around. Well, what happened? It was actually a peaceful time. I mean, you must admit.
Well, there was that little pandemic thing that he kind of bungled, but yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, well, was that his fault? I think everybody fumbled the ball in the pandemic. I think that there's a lot of retrospect now, and everybody from Fauci to Biden to Trump could look back on that and say,
Sure.
well, we maybe should have done this different.
Bingo. I totally agree with that. You know, what bothers me more than anything else is the armchair quarterbacks that can, the retrospect kings that look back and, we should have done this, we should have done that. You had to be in that position. Let me just give you this little bit of a timeline and tell me as a Canadian how I'm wrong. The first one is the first 2 years of Trump's presidency. He had Congress, he had the Senate, and he was president. Why wasn't more done with the border then?
Well, and it's funny.
Let me just interject because, everybody's beating up on Joe Biden, who just tried to push through something on the border a few weeks ago, and Trump blocked it, obviously. But if Trump is this great, guy with the border and everything, first 2 years, he had it all to himself. What happened?
I don't think Trump ever had all to himself.
He had Senate. He had Congress.
Okay,
had the president.
The Republicans led the Senate. The Republicans led Congress. The Republicans then and Republicans now in Congress are not pro-Trump.
Okay, so you're saying, but it's Trump. A fair. But listen, I think it's a fair question that if he's the antidote to the ineffective Joe Biden. And again, we didn't want to start throwing jobs numbers and economy and how Trump inherited the Barack Obama economy. Barack Obama, who Trump spent most of Obama's presidency questioning his birth certificate. Forget that. But as Fred said, he had it all. And what he did push through was $1 trillion deficit and tax cuts for the rich. Those are facts. But I think it's a fair point that Jason makes that Jason, we wanted to talk to, the reason I fished around and found you is because I thought you were a reasonable guy. We've had a few people on the show. We had a guy that was a total anti-vax crazy man on our show early in the pandemic, and all we did was scream at him for 20 minutes. So we didn't want that. So I think you're making a fair point about what motivates you, but you also have to look at the other side and go, there are some facts that you're cherry picking that aren't actually holding up, in terms of for some reason, Joe Biden and his Democrat agenda doesn't seem to resonate with people like you, even though he's done a pretty good job by all metrics of presidents. He certainly isn't the worst president in the history of the U.S., as Trump calls him.
No, I'm not saying that he's the worst president. He doesn't stand for those things. I gave a really kind of a simple list of a half a dozen things that I just don't think that he stands for at all.
So you think he wants? You think he stands for open borders? You think he doesn't stand for legal immigration?
I absolutely do. I think it was encouraged. I think that what was pushed through as a border security plan, if you look into that, there was a lot more than border security. That one of the things about legislation is they're allowed to call it something and then throw in all this other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's not new. That's every bill that goes to the floor. Every bill does.
Part of the problem.
Freddie?
No, and again, let's just sort of reset this. We appreciate you coming on, and again, the whole idea is hard. It is as I sit here and I look at you, and you're a well-spoken guy, and I mean your profile. You just seem like a normal guy. The whole point of this was, how does somebody throw their lot behind such a horrible human being? And again, you've even said, you admit on a lot of levels he's a horrible human being. And again, my perspective, Howard's perspective, going forward, it's just a lot of what this guy says, and not so much the past, which I think a lot of his accomplishments are bullshit. They never happened. He'll tell you they did, and people that are his cheerleader will claim they did when they didn't. It's just going forward. Some of the things he said, like the other day, Laura Trump now, who's leading the RNC or whatever, it's going to be scorched earth when he becomes president. And I really have fears. I mean, when it comes to the Constitution and wanting to change things, and you talk about term limits, all those things, are you not afraid of his focus if he's reelected? Like, is he really going to govern, or is he just going to run roughshod over everybody he doesn't like? That's what would scare me. And further to that, you would go, because there's no alternative in the lesser of two evils. Like, I can't see Joe Biden as that evil that he could even compete with what might be around the corner with Donald Trump.
I always come back to, I'm not going to argue with you at all about character and about Trump's character that he's shown. I always thought, going clear back to 15, whenever he first came out saying that he was going to run for president, I thought that'll never happen.
We were all going like, this is a joke, right?
Absolutely a joke. But he was the only guy from the outside the politician. He wasn't so outside. He's still an elite. So he wasn't as outside as what somebody like me would like.
Yeah.
But he was more outside than, going back to what you pointed out, these people that are making 140 grand a year that are millionaires.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
Republicans, Democrats, they are all doing it. So when going back to what you previously said about how he had the House, he had the Senate. I don't think he ever had it. There may be 4 or 5 Republicans that are pro-Trump, and that's it.
Well, that's all changed now. But, you talk about the whole idea of draining the swamp and Hillary's emails and all that sort of 2015. It almost seems cute now. But, you made I broke down the word character because, as doddering as they like to make Joe Biden seem, and he's an 80-year-old guy. And in this case, though, Joe Biden's lifetime in politics at least gives him an understanding of the way the world works that I don't think Donald Trump has. Let's not argue that. Donald Trump, I've done a lot of reading about this guy. He's not the best and brightest. But as far as going in there and draining the swamp, the Trump family, first of all, he never divested himself. He never put his business in a trust. He was day-to-day while he was in the White House. And the amount of money that he left there with, it makes Hunter Biden's laptop look laughable in terms of the hundreds of millions of dollars of benefit that Donald Trump left the White House with. So when it comes to character and what Fred said, at least I would think, okay, of the two sort of swamp dwellers, of the two of them, I would think that the lesser of those two evils would be the Biden group versus the, you look at the rogues gallery, that phrase of the people that were around Trump and all the indictments and all the prison time. You're not going to get that. You didn't get that from Obama. You didn't even get that from George Bush Jr. So character isn't enough for you?
Character definitely plays in, but to me, the character is questionable for both of them. It just is. You mentioned the Hunter Biden laptop. So, what about character? The first couple of years of that coming out, it was the FBI, everybody involved says it's fake news. It's just made up. It's just Trump stuff. Well, now everybody kind of accepts it as, well, that's actually real. Oh, it actually is a fact that Hunter Biden is installed in these areas where there's allowed to be some money funneled upstream.
I know, Jason, but
it's all a mess.
Compared to
Jared Kushner's $2 billion from the Saudis.
But
it's all no good.
Yeah,
and the character is questionable. It is just because if Trump made a few $1 million more doesn't mean that Joe Biden's a good guy, and his character is so much better. I think they're all in it for themselves. I think that you even take a good man, which we didn't have that option. There hasn't been a good man, but take a good man. Somebody find a good man, install him in politics, and within a few years, he's going to be ruined. He's going to be just like all of them. And that comes back to the necessity for term limits. I don't want any of them. I don't want
I'm with you, dude.
Chuck Schumer. I don't want Mitch McConnell
I get it.
rising to the top and becoming president because he's no better than Joe Biden. What has Joe Biden done in this lifetime? He's been in politics longer than I've been alive.
Right.
And
well, he's done a pretty good job of cleaning up Trump's COVID mess. But besides that, let me attack it from this standpoint. Americans are very patriotic, or they give that impression that they're patriotic. And you have this guy that, whether you think the election was stolen or not, it hurts the country that he continues this narrative. It's not good for the country. It's not good. It's not good for America. Screwing around with those electoral ballots, not good for the country. Anti-American. On and on and on. All these things that he does, the fights that he picks, the people he surrounds him with, Marjorie Taylor Greene, people like this, it's just not good for America. If I'm a proud American, I look at these things and go, enough, move on, buddy, because it's not helping the country. It's only hurting the country. Does that stuff not bother you? Like, look at what happened in Georgia with those two black women handing each other a ginger mint. Again, proven. He's not once come out and said, leave those women's lives have been destroyed. Donald Trump, who was president of the United States, watched those two women's lives destroyed and hasn't had the balls to come out and say, lay off those women. That is wrong. I mean, that's the grassroots stuff that bothers me. He's such a horrible human being, and he is so honestly anti-American through all his pro-American bullshit. He's anti-American because on a daily basis, he's hurting his country.
And I would say there's no Joe Biden equivalency of what Fred just said. Joe Biden hasn't gone out and ruined innocent people's lives for his own agenda and narcissistic, his own self, his own selfishness. What did you think about that?
I don't agree that that's the case, that he hasn't ruined anybody's lives. Hunter Biden, his son,
he's not the president, Jason. He's the son of Joe Biden, and the guy's got problems. He's a drug addict. Super. He wasn't the president. He wasn't the president.
How about Joe Biden's daughter, who's written in her diary some pretty terrible things about Joe Biden getting in the shower with her. There is very questionable.
Well, I mean, but I could send you pictures of what's her face, Ivanka Trump, sitting on Donald's lap and him saying it's too bad he can't have sex with her. I mean, we could play that game all day. That's
not what he said.
Yes, he did. Listen, it's the same thing.
Is that a quote?
No, he didn't say that.
He didn't. But basically, he's inferring that.
He said if it wasn't his daughter, he would date her,
which is still pretty creepy. I've got daughters.
No, I know.
But that's anyway, rather than get into a shit fight with you, because clearly, you'll just keep coming with. Obviously, characters.
I'm not a statistician.
Yeah, I know you're not.
And I am not a guy that's full of quotes. I am not armed with quotes or anything about this or that. I think the character. Bottom line, character is questionable for each of them. So what?
Right.
It still always comes back down to those points that I had: anti-war.
No, and I don't want to. You don't have to listen again. I know, but here's what I would say. It's clear, and what I would say what I've learned from this is that in your mind, in your paradigm, your model, you see equal flaws in both. Whereas but and every time we could say, okay, Joe Biden's just as bad as Trump, but he's not up on 91 charges. and then you'll have an answer for that, and then we'll just have to say, well, that seems crazy from the outside. You know, one of the things I've been saying on the show for quite some time is this phrase: there used to be a time where somebody would be running for president and say, grab him by the pussy, and that would be the end of it. You know, there was a time in American politics where that would be the end of your campaign. But we're in new territory now.
Let me ask you something, too. And again, did you see Trump's Gettysburg speech?
I did not.
Well, you should do yourself a favor, because
it's
to
pretty
me,
interesting.
that's the scariest thing I've seen yet. It says so much about Trump. Number one, he lies. Number two, he knows nothing about American history. Number three, he can't really ad lib or speak off the cuff. And one other thing I would ask you. You talk about a good man. Do you not think Barack Obama is a good man?
I don't know Barack Obama.
No, I mean, he was your president for 8 years. In 2008, he took an economy that was in shambles, and in 2016 handed it off, a great economy, to Donald Trump, who, to his credit, massaged it for a little while before COVID hit. But he was a good, decent man, don't you think? I'm just talking. Don't you, as your president for 8 years, didn't you think? Now, in retrospect, looking at Trump and looking even at Joe Biden, if you want to, you don't think he was a pretty decent man?
Oh, as far as character of what I knew and could see of him, I think he was a good guy.
But you're tired of good guys. You're tired of good guys.
It doesn't matter. I'm not looking for a good guy who perpetuates war. I'm not looking for a good guy who does not do anything to limit the terms of career politicians. I'm not looking for a nice guy who continues to allow people in Congress to insider trade on stocks.
100%.
I don't care if he's a good guy. A good guy.
But you did say you wanted a good man out there, and it's funny, Fred. I was thinking Obama as well. Listen, before we let you go, you did say at the beginning of this, and by the way, we really appreciate you, and you know, probably if you wouldn't mind, from time to time, we could check in with you.
Sure. I've enjoyed it, really. Thank you for having me.
We're fucking great guys, Jay. We're just great guys. You said,
if I'm ever lost and somehow I end up in Canada, I'll look you guys up and we'll get a beer together or something.
Hey, let me just say this too. We appreciate you having you on. And I was so hoping this thing, as we went along, didn't sort of degenerate. And it didn't, I don't think. I mean, a couple of contentious moments. Listen, we sit here in Canada scratching our heads. We know you're not alone. Half the country thinks the way you do. We can't understand it. We can't believe it. And yet, at the same time, we're being a bit hypocritical because a similar scenario is right now playing out in Canada. So believe us, we're not sitting here thinking you're some kind of a nut. We're just trying to understand how you and half your country got to where you did. And you helped us with that.
Yep.
If I could interject one more little point. People, maybe, you know, again, I hate to say that I represent people. I know how I think and I hear others talk. The more that they, you know, the invisible theys out there, the more that they try to take the leading Republican candidate and completely disqualify him and take the choice away from voters, the more we want him.
Yeah, I can see that.
So they're not doing any favors, but they may succeed in that.
But you understand
how these trials go, they may succeed. We may only have one choice.
There's no they. They're like, you understand. You're more in tune than most Americans. There is no they. Those are laws. He's not above them. It's not like Joe Biden is orchestrating those. They're just laws that were broken. But that's for another conversation. What I also want to say, I appreciate, we've had a long conversation with you, and not once did you mention the deep state. Love that. Even though we both know. even though.
I got.
Yeah, I know. Dude, hey, dude, like, we are so, well, I am for sure, but I know he's part of this. term limits, if we take nothing away, I totally agree with that. There shouldn't.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal for me too. And I've been saying this for a long time. It's just bullshit that you stay in there for life. But I wanted to wrap up with this. You said
especially the Supreme Court. That's the worst. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're within 3 hours of Detroit, Indiana, Chicago, and Toledo. That's what you said?
Indianapolis.
I'm sorry, that's right. So Detroit, Indianapolis, Chicago, and Toledo.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the most important question is, who's your NFL team?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. I mean, it's always the Colts because I'm from Indiana. I got to stand with the Colts
right.
No matter what. It just is that way.
Well, you should know we're 1 hour from Buffalo, and that's our group right there.
All right.
All right, my friend.
I won't hold it against you.
That's well. Hey, you've got so much other material. Bunch of bleeding.
Jason, please come back as we get closer to the election.
Absolutely.
And I hope you had a good time. And then
I did.
As I tried to assure you when I was messaging you back and forth, I said, "Listen, man, we just wanted to have a reasonable conversation with a guy that seems, kind of like someone we relate to. We're dads. We've got kids. And we just want everyone to get along." And it'll be interesting to see. We definitely would have you back if you would come.
Absolutely.
All right, there he is. By the way, there's 2 names on it. There's Jay Thomas, and then I have another name in front of me. Which one is your name?
Jason Thomas Rohrbach is my full name.
Oh, okay.
I was just I was trying to be a little Hollywood and coming up with my ex name.
I love it. Okay,
Thomas. So this guy must be something.
That's right.
I'm not. I have 300 followers, so I'm all right.
Well, isn't the J. Thomas dead?
Yeah, I don't know, but that was what I grew up on. Little J. Thomas. And,
absolutely.
Growing pains, all that.
I'll tell you now, you're going to have more followers because the Humble and Fred people will be flocking to your site. So expect another 5 or 10.
Then, huh?
Yeah, 301. All right, Jay, you take care, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
I appreciate you,
buddy. Take it easy.
Yep.
I appreciate you. Just let yourself out.
Yep.
And this program is brought to you by a bunch of people, Fred, that we have to acknowledge now. And who would that be on your list?
The Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, Canada's #1 group benefits plan for small business. If you have a small business and you thought about a benefits package for your people, Chambers Plan, that's the way to go. Go to chamberplan.ca, get a free quote today. I mean, I can list all the products, and I do most days, but take the time to go and just read about it and see what's available. You can buy in at different levels, and the products are fantastic for your small business. Of course, everybody's concerned about prescriptions and dental. That's usually at the top of the list, but it goes far beyond that with, different kinds of therapy, an HR component, travel and insurance. They have the teledoc system where you can actually make contact with doctors specifically for what ails you. Again, it's all there if you go to chamberplan.ca. They do a great job of holding the line on premiums. That's traditional. Again, they're going to pop up a bit, but nothing like the big, mean companies. This is a non-profit, so they have your small business in mind. The Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, chamberplan.ca.
I apologize here. I'm just having a slow computer day trying to open up this document. One of the biggest things you'll ever do is buy a house, own a house, one of the biggest outlays of cash. And if you're looking for a way to make that a little less painful, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm frozen.
I know you're frozen.
But
Am I frozen to you?
No, you're fantastic.
And I can hear you.
I wonder what that is. My internet's fine. That's weird. Anyway, let me talk about Mike Kazarian. And then I may have to start the Zoom meeting again. Lender's Choice Mortgages, as I mentioned, the idea of getting a mortgage and having it renew, well, that's coming up for millions of Canadians. You might want to avail yourself of the people at Lender's Choice, a member of the Mortgage Alliance, license number 13582. Mike Kazarian was on the other day, and we were talking about the Bank of Canada rate and what a good rate might be for you. By the way, these guys are recognized in the top percentages, top 5%. I've mentioned this, Fred. The top 5% of mortgage brokers in Canada. That's no bullshit, man. So it is fantastic. In this important time in your life as you renew your mortgage, have a conversation with Mike. That's all we ask. Reach out and say, hey, I support the Humble and Fred show. So tell me what you can do for me and my family when it comes to mortgages. LendersChoiceMortgage.ca, or get a hold of Mike at Mike Kazarian. Mike at LendersChoice.ca. Sorry, there you go. I'm just a little bit freaked out here. I'll see what Dan thinks I should do. Dan Duran connecting. See you. I can still see you. You're fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
It is very
Why don't you
interesting.
turn your camera off and on and see what happens?
All right. Let me see here. Living in America.
Are we having technical problems?
Well, Howard's frozen. Look.
Okay.
there
So
we
I think if Freddie was right, I think it was the camera.
Oh, so you're on a different camera right now.
No, I'm just changing cameras. My other camera fucked up. There we go.
Oh,
there we go.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that went okay with that guy, Jason.
Yeah, in half an hour, you're not going to change anybody's mind what that did. Well, it scares me from this standpoint. When I saw Jason, and I said off the top, he's a level-headed guy, and, you look at his profile, he's normal. How many normals like him are going to vote for Trump? And again, it's not what's right or wrong, it's why. And, he told us why, and we're not going to change his mind, and it's disturbing. It just shows you where government has driven people.
Well, it's when I said to you when I reached out to him before we announced that he was going to be on the show. When I first told you, I'd sort of been out there. Well, and I'm sure you have too. Just trying to find if there's somebody we could have a conversation with. And I said what I liked about him is that he wasn't a tinfoil hat wearing QAnon, fucking deep state. Joe Biden's drinking baby blood, and it's probably, and I think you make a good point, that it's scarier that he's just such a normal dude.
Yeah, that's the concern. And listen, over the years, a lot of John Edwards and Bill Clinton they've been brought down with sort of scandal and seediness. So I don't have a lot of time for the Hunter Biden stuff and the Joe Biden in the shower with his kid. I don't have a lot of time with that, because if there was anything really to it, given the strength of the right-wing media in the United States, it would be a bigger thing. Sorry, it just would.
Well, and same with where's Hunter Biden gone? If it's such an issue, why isn't he in court? Why isn't he been charged federally? Why aren't there news conferences every day where Hunter Biden comes out of a court? But overall, I think the takeaway is what you said, and I totally agree that because of Jason's very sort of everyday American normal guy demeanor and his, again, cherry picking some Joe Biden stuff and, all that border stuff is not completely true. But the fact that he and a lot of people like him, a lot of that middle class like him, he is a business owner, he does pretty well, I'm sure, but, he's fed up with government. You could hear it.
And as we all know, I say all the time, government is so cyclical. The world is cyclical. And, that Trump, what bugs me, he just caught the Obama economy wave and rode it and then wrecked it through COVID. But you know what I mean? That was Obama's economy. Like, just look, it's there to be seen.
Yeah.
From 2008 to 2016, boom, right up, hands it to... So here we are in a situation, then COVID happens. Now, Joe Biden has had to clean it up, but it's taken 4 years just towards the end of his thing. Now he's blamed for a bad economy, and Trump will take it over again if he's reelected, just as it's back on its feet.
Yeah.
That's cyclical. And even the war thing, what Obama went through with Benghazi and all these things, it's like, well, it's cyclical. Shit happens. So he talks about wars. So what's going to happen? Trump's going to get elected, and he's going to withdraw all support to Ukraine and just let Russia roll over Ukraine, and what's next? Like, that's not war?
Yeah, and again, and I agree with you again, but I mean, the biggest takeaway from that conversation for me, and I don't know about you, is that character. Because I Dan's heard me ranting. He's heard you. The thing about Dan, for you people at home, is that Dan speaks to both of us individually and as a group. And, many of the Humble and Fred rantings happen with Dan personally. You've heard me say since 2015 and 2016 on the show and off how we focus so much on his character. Mm-hmm. And we could have listed 30,000 things, because there are 30,000 lies, apparently. But there's many, many, many things that you could have gone, but this about Trump, Jeffrey Epstein about Trump, third wife about Trump, fucking on and on for, again, Joe Biden in the shower. But it doesn't matter. That's the biggest thing. It certainly is a lesson to me that character doesn't matter to the average American. I'm sorry, Donald Trump's character.
No. And you know what? In a different time, maybe it did.
Yeah.
But again, look at his age, too. He's got a couple of young kids. And again, just what's happening here in Canada. You have a whole generation that is looking for answers, got left behind. They're looking at government as we know it and going, this isn't right. Mm-hmm. This has to change. And unfortunately, we've often said, too, all Donald Trump had to do was be a nice guy, and he'd still be president. For better or worse, I mean, as far as politics go.
Yeah. Well, he's not a nice guy, though.
No, I know he's not, but I'm just saying, just say if somebody, and we've been up this road before, say somebody had sat him in a room, all people around him, and I know it can never happen because the way he is, but what if they had got to him and said, just smooth the edges a bit, buddy? That's your future is at stake.
Well, because he can because he's the guy.
I know he's not, but I'm just saying, what if he'd still be president?
Well, that's like saying, what if your aunt had a dick? She'd be your uncle.
No, it's not.
It's
strategy.
I know, but no one can talk.
He blew his strategy.
I know, but once you know who he is, there is no talking to him. I get your argument, I disagree. What if somebody could talk to him? Well, what if somebody could talk to him 50 years ago and say, hey, those fucking 6 kids that you said killed that woman that didn't? Maybe you could come on and apologize.
No,
it's not his character.
No. And that's why we're at where we're at right now.
Because what you say is true. Any reasonable person would have been able to understand reason. But listen, all you have to do is go watch that Gettysburg thing. All you have to do is watch him every day at the end of trial.
I know that. I mean, I don't even know what we're saying. I'm just obviously
it would have been great if he hadn't been such an asshole. Absolutely.
Yeah, obviously he can't, and he isn't, and that's where we are. I'm just saying from a strategic standpoint, and that just shows how dumb he fucking is.
Yeah. Oh, he's super dumb.
Because if he'd have just sat down and listened to some people and said, smooth those edges, he probably wouldn't be in court right now.
Yeah, think about the things he would say. I have all the words. Yeah. There's all these clips. I love this stuff. There's all these clips of him talking about whatever he would go and visit. He would go visit a fucking, I don't know, a physics factory and go, oh yeah, I was pretty good at physics. He thinks he's smart. The reason that your argument doesn't hold is because he thinks he's smarter than everybody he's ever met. Yeah. So there is no scenario which he could have been spoken to. But again, the takeaway for me from talking to Jason will be, I think and have thought, and I know you guys too agree, that Donald Trump's horrible. His status as the most horrible person in the world doesn't matter as much as even though Jason acknowledged, yeah, he's a flawed character, but none of that matters to the level that I would have thought. I would have thought it would have an effect.
And just to back up, even from that standpoint, that, you know, my scenario, these people talking, the fact that you can't, it's impossible. He won't listen. That's just another reason you don't want him to be the most powerful man on earth.
Exactly.
Just another reason. You know, it's
anyway.
It's something. It
really is something.
It's something.
Dander,
you know, and I mean, we didn't even talk. You know,
go ahead.
This guy had Trump University, where he literally blatantly ripped off kids and never reimbursed them. You know, he
had a charity ripped off, and he never fucking reimbursed them.
He was a slum landlord. He kicked poor black people out of his apartments. He
ripped off contractors and never paid them. Yeah. He fucking took people to court who tried to get the money that they owed him. He fucking bankrupted. He bankrupted, Dan, a casino. Do you know how bad a business person you have to be to lose money in a fucking casino?
This is what I was going to say when he was talking about Joe Biden in the shower. And Jesus Christ, you know, a lot of fathers have had showers with kids, and I don't know what the story is. But you could take that little seed and blow it up. It would just be, you know, if you had time or you're face to face and you could write a list and say, okay, you write me a list of the bad man Joe Biden, and I'll write you a list of the bad man Donald Trump, and let's compare the lists. I mean, when you have to get it, when one of your arguments is he got in a shower once with his daughter is on the list, it's like, okay. What about the kids that paid $10,000 for the university and never saw them?
And what about, you know, fucking all that time he spent with Jeffrey Epstein? What about all the women that have accused him of rape? Well, there's quite a few of them. Dan, you were trying to say something. Some moments of ranting ago.
Well, one of the things which to you both your points is that it comes across that all politicians are this way.
Right.
So now we're ignoring what Trump did because they're all painted with the same brush.
Right.
And part of the big problem is that, democracy is messy to begin with, but there's people who are not serious, unserious people who have come to a lot of governments around the world, and especially the United States government, where they're frozen up. And a large part of that has to do with the Republicans. Like, we're stopping things here. We're making government stupid.
Yeah.
And everybody's frustrated with that.
It's true.
So we're blaming, the politicians for all this. And Trump is just another one of them, but he's going to fix things somehow. But his ilk, his conservative side, caused a lot of this because of all the dysfunction that's in government that they brought to add it on to the government problems.
No, I think the key with Donald Trump, and again, what you just said, is what Jason. He's not government. He's anti-government. He's anti-establishment, and he is, because he's talked about, whether it's a lot of it's bullshit. But he says the things people like Jason want to hear. You know what I mean? And Jason's right, and when he had the Senate and he had Congress and everything, there was a lot of them who were going, I don't know, we didn't want this guy as our leader, so there was some of that. But he's the anti-establishment guy, and I think that's probably the most favorable thing for him in the eyes of half the country.
And I want to say something that's going to sound odd coming out of my mouth, but sometimes, and I'm guilty of it, we paint Donald Trump with a blanket brush because I'm going to speak for myself. I have such a confirmation bias against the guy that I ignore anything that doesn't fit into that. And I'm as guilty of that as people are on the right of their confirmation bias. And what I mean is, there's nothing you can tell me now, or I feel like it, of anything he did that was good, that I won't go, yeah, but he's a fucking douchebag. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm so soured on it because it starts with me, and I'm not doesn't end with character, but a lot of it is I find him so despicable that I can't see anything beyond that. So my point being, how that relates to Jason is, once you have a mindset, which is you pointed out, once you say, okay, he's the anti-establishment guy, and that's the most important thing. One of the first things Jason mentioned in that list was term limits. So you put that together, then what you can do is what I just said. You can ignore a lot of stuff because his bias is he doesn't want government, he wants term limits, he wants less, swamp, blah, blah, blah. Even though, as I pointed out to him, very few presidents in history have sucked that system drier than Donald Trump did. From Secret Service agents being charged triple to stay at his hotels to fucking golfing on the whole thing about, I'm never going to golf, all that bullshit. But you can ignore that because the things that are important to Jason, Donald Trump checks those boxes.
This term limit things too, it's like bashing your head against the wall, because what would have to happen? Congress and the Senate would have to actually vote for term limits. So they would be voting themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
What they should do, if there would be any solution, say by 2040, we're voting as of 2040 or something, so the current guys wouldn't be affected or something.
Yeah.
But again, young guys, that would affect them. But
I know.
There's some, and you talk about politics right now, like Trudeau now has started attacking Pierre Poilievre. He's a fearmonger and he's negative and all this and that. So, that's his tact, and which is fine. That's valid. Do what you want. But again, when it comes back, I would ask, okay, that's great, but what have you done for me? And what are you going to do for me in the future? And people aren't stupid anymore. They're so pissed off with government. The more, it could be almost like the Trump factor. The more that he pounds away at Poilievre, the more people may align with him, because it's like, okay, buddy, but what did you do for me? And if the next election's coming up, what are you going to do for me? Well, he doesn't have a lot of answers. So now his tact is to attack Poilievre, and I think that's disastrous from his standpoint. There's so much of this playing out in Canada that they went through. It's startling.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I know what I was going to say.
It's a little bit. You can't paint the Canadian Trudeau is Trudeau, and I don't necessarily agree he should be leading the party anymore. He's done. He should usher himself out. But it hasn't. The Liberal government hasn't done nothing. They haven't like every single thing that they've done is horrible. And I mean,
didn't say that.
Well, you were just saying that. Well, what have they done for you? Well,
yeah, what have you done generally? And again, don't ask a 68-year-old man who's got money in the bank and his house is paid for, or you, Dan. Go out and ask the 36 or 37-year-old. Go ask them, or a 40-year-old, what he's done.
Yeah, and what I was going to say
that's the question.
You could ask, but okay, I'll go back 10 years when Harper was in power and ask a 35-year-old, what has government done for you? Most of them, they can't tell you. They don't know from day to day what government does and doesn't do for them on an average year. They're not really that plugged into it.
No, but what they do know is what their debt line is, how much groceries are, what the price of gas is, all those things. And again, often government really is, beyond fixing those things.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
You know what? No, but the problem is that when you are the sitting government, it hangs off you. So
absolutely.
You got to deal with it.
The same way that inflation, calling it, the Biden inflation or Trudeau inflation, it's not, that's exactly what I was going to say. Whenever, back to your idea of everything's in a cycle, economies, policies, etc. And if you're the sitting government, you get hung with it, hangs on you as
sure.
But as far as I agree with Dan, the way that politics works here, of course Trudeau is going to try and vilify Poilievre. Of course Poilievre is going to make Trudeau seem ineffective. That's what politicians do to get elected. It's never been anything but that. The reason it seems so exaggerated now is because we live in a fucking overblown society, but it's no different than when Diefenbaker ran against Stanfield or whoever fucking ran. I just pulled that out of my ass. But it's only because it's exaggerated now. It seems different, but it's always been very. It's certainly not new that politicians fucking say that about each other.
No. Yeah, it's the same, but it's different. It's well, you said it when you were talking to Jason. It used to be if a guy, what was if a guy said grab him by the pussy, would be out. Well, things are different now. We've reached like a boiling point or a pressure point where people are now overlooking that stuff because they're so pissed off with government. And that, well, we heard it today. That explains Donald Trump. That'll explain why Pierre Poilievre, what he's all about, maybe 10 years ago would have been, fuck it, this guy's nuts.
Yeah, well, because definitely people's tolerances have changed.
This is it.
Because in the time of Harper and Chrétien and Mulroney and I can't remember who was the Liberal at the time of Mulroney, probably Chrétien as well. But there was a level of decency that they didn't cross. But we've got a whole new level of tolerance when it comes to decency. I'm just saying that the attacking each other thing isn't new.
Oh, no, I know. But the thing is, attacking each other years ago wouldn't see people gravitate to somebody so distasteful. That's all. That's the concern.
Yeah, because but we could get a Canadian on here like Jason who'd say, well, I don't think Poilievre is that distasteful, and here's why. Or I think he's distasteful in some areas, but I'm going with him anyways because of my distaste for the establishment. You know, I've said this also, back to the term limits. We have a prime minister for 10 years. You know, when Mulroney's Conservatives were decimated in Parliament, people forget they went from 290 plus seats to 2. Because people were sick of them. It didn't have any. It had so little to do with how a good, bad, or whatever job they were doing. It was just time for a change. Which is, I think, a great segue to introduce this man. But this I know you're like Dan's just, Dan's got this look on his face. He just can't wait to get out of here and start drywalling something. And I think we should appreciate your patience, Dan. We appreciate
What's less
it.
tedious than this? Drywalling.
Yeah. And that phrase, by the way, that Jason signed off with, that is one of I really have an affection for that salutation, whatever you want, that Americans do. Because when I was in North Carolina last week, you hear that all the time, and I like it when people say, like a service person or a waitress or waiter will say, you'll say thanks, and they go, yeah, I appreciate you. Like, it's a nice thing to say. And that's how a lot of times, because, a lot of, in Canada, people say cheers, cheers. But saying to somebody, I appreciate you, is quite a nice way to interact in a society where, on the one hand, they appreciate you. On the other hand, they might shoot you in the face. You've got you've got both of those. So, Dan, on behalf of Humble and Fred,
yes,
we appreciate you.
Now, here's to a fella named Dan Duran, a hell of a guy with a hella big wang, the quintessential anchor man. His voice is nice and low. Dan Duran, the anchorman comes. As for credentials, he has none. Can't tell a headline from his bum, but his voice is nice and low. Dan Duran, the anchorman's here. He's prone to falling off his chair, but he's got a big wang, so he don't care, and his voice is nice and low.
My voice is nice and low.
And now live from Lisa's house, the matrimonial home of Mr. and Mrs. Duran Giebert. Here is movie anchor, television star, Dan Duran. And before he begins, I know. And before he begins, I see here on the Newswire, top story, U.S. bans TikTok, keeps Titcock. Over to you, Dan.
Top story. Thank you.
Dan.
Thank you so much. We could talk about other things, too. We could talk about the Trump trial that resumes today, or the Supreme Court with the immunity hearing. That's happening again.
Yeah.
But did you know The dreaded hammerhead worm has arrived. The hammerhead worm. It's an invasive and toxic worm. It can grow up to grossly 3 feet long.
Oh, come on.
3 feet long.
Come
it's
on,
made its
Dan.
way to Ontario, across the GTA, and into Quebec as well. Gardeners and pet owners are being warned about its presence. It carries with it a paralyzing toxin made from the same molecule as that of the pufferfish, one of the most poisonous in the world. Now,
No, it's too easy, Fred. Do you want this one, or do I take? Do you want to take it, or do I?
No, all I will say is I've seen a picture of this thing, and I swear, if my wife saw it, we'd have to bury her. Like, it's the creepiest fucking thing you ever want to see.
I was going to go the other way and say, I'm looking here on Twitter, and I see that Dan Duran's handle is @hammerheadworm.3 feet. So, sorry, Dan. You knew that was coming when you decided to choose the hammerhead worm.
See, with Dan, though, considering his girth, worm doesn't do it. It's more like snake. So
but the hammerhead part.
Yeah, the hammerhead.
Dan, where are these vermin? Where are they?
They're in the soil. More vigilant you should be if you have moist soil that is rich in earthworms. That would be the telltale. So watch out. Don't touch it with your hands. Wear gloves.
So seriously, what, you can get poisoned by them?
Well, yeah, you probably get really sick. You wouldn't, do like a pufferfish death, where you get all frozen up or whatever you call it, stiffen up. Or, what do they call that? I don't know. Anyway,
there's that. There's an actual dish in sushi where it's a poisonous fish, and you have to sort of be.
Yeah, that's the pufferfish.
Is that the pufferfish where you have to be certified in order to serve it?
Yeah,
and if you do it wrong, people.
If you eat it,
yeah.
And what did you say? And what happens to you? You get all stiff,
and you die.
Yeah,
you fucking get all paralyzed. I think the word you're looking for is paralyzed.
Yeah.
By the way, Celine Dion, her stiff person's disease is. No, she's in a bit of a remission now because she's talking about performing again. So.
Well, I know in my early 60s, my stiff person disease definitely went into remission. I'm sorry. Just trying to inject a little fun back into the shit show. Just the old shit. Freddie, do you have, before we continue with Dan's news, Frederick, do you have any more news for us?
Yes, I do.
Well, please stand by. Here we go. There's a little bit of background music.
Okay. Crazy last night. By the way, for Game 4, I think the Maple Leafs are a slight underdog against the Boston Bruins. If you saw the game last night, it was so typical of what we've seen for the past, 9 years now? The Maple Leafs have trouble winning at home in the playoffs. Imagine that. They've lost 5 in a row playoff games at home now. 9 of the last 10 playoff games, they haven't scored more than 2 goals. Crazy.
Freddie, I have a question for you. Don't teams normally perform better when they're in front of a home crowd?
Well, this is it, but it's different.
It seems strange.
Because all the visiting teams so want to play here, you see. That's the excuse. That all the visiting teams so want to play in Toronto that, they play better than the Leafs for some reason.
Maybe the Leafs could pretend they were the visiting teams.
Mm-hmm. And our $40 million power play, 1 for 11 right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're saying we're spending a lot of money on 4 players that are doing squat.
Yes, we're spending a lot of money and getting zero return, basically. Whether you're a sports bettor, a horse racing fan, a poker casino player, Bodog, your number one source of online gambling entertainment, from their industry-leading odds, world-class sports book, to their fully loaded casino and race book, they've been providing Canadian players with an unparalleled gaming experience since 1994. And again, going into the series, Boston a slight favorite, which I could understand. The Leafs were favored last night. They lose, and Boston in Game 4 Saturday night, the slight favorite now. But don't get too excited, Leaf fans, because they ain't getting through this series.
They're okay, but I want to say before I start shitting on the Leafs like you are, there is a world where, as I was downtown last night as the Leaf game let out, and all I saw, because I knew they'd lost. But there is a world where Leaf fans. By the way, speaking of Leaf fans, here's this is Toronto Mike theme. Where they it's not just about winning and losing. I know that sounds crazy, but they do enjoy watching their team. So maybe they don't feel the same way you do. Again, not everyone's been watching them their whole life of misery. But I didn't notice last night as I was driving through Front Street over to Spadina, which was a fucking nightmare. They didn't seem too devastated, the Leaf fans.
Well, because obviously they're conditioned to it. You know what I mean? It's almost like Leaf fans go in expecting the worst, and then if it's not, well, then that's euphoria. But if the same old happens, it's just like, oh, let's go for a beer.
But do you know what I mean in terms of entertainment? Yeah. I saw people that, and they weren't, they didn't have like black armbands on. Mike, did you watch the game? I didn't watch it.
I watched every minute of this game. Absolutely.
And so, as a Leaf fan, I know what the senior Leaf fan here says. But as a Leaf fan, and as someone like me that's been watching the team off and on for 35 years, is there a point, like religion, that I could convince you to not be a Leaf fan anymore?
No, it's much like religion or Trumpism. This is my team, and I hope for the best, but I don't get upset if we don't win. Like, it's just a game. It doesn't actually matter. It's not like one of my kids is sick or something. So I enjoy it for what it is, and then I move on. But I'm going to be there Saturday night watching with my kids, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Howard. I'm a Leaf fan. I always will. I love the Leafs. I just don't particularly like this team, and I just see it for what it is. Like, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, yeah, they're going to win it. Yeah.
I wish you would do that voice. Oh, yeah, they're going to win it. Yeah, they're going to. The Leafers.
When you can see they're obvious. Maybe it's the sportscaster in me coming out all these years. I don't know.
Well, listen, I've watched and listened to you for 35 years when it comes to this team, and there have been times when, when the Dougie G era and others where you were not always this, I don't know, cynical or jaded. I'm not saying those are bad things.
No, those teams, see, the key is early 2000s, early 90s, late 90s. Those teams all overachieved, right? So it was a pleasant surprise to see them do well and move through the playoffs. This team horrifically underachieved. That's the difference.
Okay, my prediction, though, Nylander returns for Game 4. Leafs have a big win. I'm looking for this game to be tied up going back to Boston.
Right on.
Let's do
her. Let's get her done. Let's get her done.
And it's hard for me to relate because, I don't have I do enjoy the Bills. I guess I sort of have a team. I cheer for them. I want them to win and have now. So when I sit down and watch a Bills game, I'm hoping that team wins and get frustrated when they don't. But my main sports, like I'm going to watch golf this weekend. It's a know-nothing tournament, but I get satisfaction as a sports fan in that sport because I just enjoy watching the action. Is there no enjoyment for you? And I say, Freddie, any enjoyment left outside of the frustration with this bunch of fuckers? Just the game itself, is that not enjoyable on any level?
No, because of the way. It's just this team, what it was supposed to be, and what it can be, and isn't. I find that frustrating.
But that colors your enjoyment of just
absolutely
the action of hockey.
And I think even outside the box, because all those fans you were talking about, all those kids that go to Maple Leaf Square and the people that spend $1,000 on playoff tickets and the people that jam into bars with their face painted and their sweaters on, they're just continuously disappointed. It's sad.
Well, and that's my point. You say they're continuously disappointed, but they're also they're not. They're like Mike. They enjoy. That's what I'm trying to get to. And I understand your point. You're painting it like they're continually disappointed. Their teams underachieves. But just as a sports, like I can watch golf on Sunday afternoon, and it doesn't have to mean anything more than the action of the sport itself. And that's what I was saying about Mike. Like whether they underachieve or all the things that Fred's right about, you still enjoy the action of the game.
Oh yeah, like Dallas and Vegas was a great game the other night.
But
I can enjoy that. Yeah,
but would you not? But you can't. So Mike, you can enjoy. You could enjoy a Dallas game, but you could also enjoy the Leafs game.
I'm probably the opposite of Fred, where I won't be interested in the Dallas game until it's like the conference finals. Whatever. But
but Howard's question was, do you not enjoy the sport?
The sport itself.
I enjoy the sport.
I surprised myself. I really surprised myself last winter because when the Bills were out of the playoffs, yes, I like Kansas City, but I watched a couple other playoff games because I've become a little bit like Delise that I just enjoy the gameplay of the NFL now. In a way I never have before.
Same here. Yeah.
In a way I've never, in all my life of casually being a football-ish fan, Flutie and all those years, but now I can watch a non-Bills game and enjoy the activity. The same way I can watch a non-major in golf and be captivated by what's going on because I just enjoy it. That's kind of what I was getting at.
But I know. But when Tiger was involved, there's you've got a different invest. Yeah. Well, that's what it's like with the Leafs with me. And again, you hit it. I've been watching this since '67, and again, I just it just bothers me the way this team has been mismanaged. That's all. And it's while watching it, it's like, oh Jesus, come on, man.
It's like when Dan's watching porn. It's not. It doesn't have to be his favorite. He can be disappointed, but he still enjoys the gameplay.
Speaking of porn, real quick, I think the most successful porno actress to become a mainstream actress is Tracy Lords.
Right. That's who I was thinking of. Sorry. You're right. It wasn't Marilyn Chamber.
What normal movie was she in?
Well, more TV, but I remember her best from Melrose Place. Like, she had a prominent role in Melrose, but she did a lot of mainstream stuff.
Wow. Well, she could act.
Speaking of mainstream stuff, we got to start wrapping this up. Mike has his own podcast, which, truth be told, is the love of his life. This Humble and Fred show, that's just like we're like his side action.
Well, I have editorial privilege on Toronto Buses, right?
No, we're like a little dirty secret Mike keeps from this mainstream friends.
That tells me you don't listen because the references to Humble and Fred are many. I had Scott Turner over last week.
What that should tell you is that I'm just trying to make a joke, and I thought that might be something I can make a joke about.
Yeah, quick hits, and then I'm going to just promote something that happened in this week. Quick hits is that there's a very popular, wonderful episode of The Simpsons where Homer thinks he ate part of the blowfish that would kill him, and he got 24 hours to live. This is a famous episode.
Nice.
Okay.
And quickly here, just a little FYI for you Steely Dan fans, is that it was 50 years ago today that Ricky Don't Lose That Number was released by Steely Dan. This day, 50 years ago.
It's funny, I used to play that when I was a radio DJ back in the 70s, before I actually became a Steely Dan fan. I don't know about you, Dan, because you were also an announcer in those days. I really... not one of my favorite Steely Dan songs. What about you two?
Then it wasn't. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Then it wasn't. It's funny. I came out this came out in 73, or was it 74, Mike?
Oh, 50 years ago today. That's 74.
So I started playing this somewhere in the late 70s as a radio DJ, and never really. But now I can hear it. Freddie, what about you? Did you ever like this song?
Not bad, yeah.
No.
Just mid-pack, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mid-pack.
Mm-hmm. Mid-pack, yeah.
Mid-pack.
Mid-pack. This is their biggest hit, right? In terms of hit.
I don't know where it ranks. I don't think it's...
Wouldn't Reelin' in the Years be?
No, I think the... whatever album came out in 1980 was Katie Lied. I think that... No, actually, you know what, Mike? Their biggest hit was FM.
But Gaucho came out in 1980, right?
Yeah. But I'm saying in terms of their biggest hit, it was the soundtrack to the movie.
Oh.
FM.
Okay. Mike, You'd know.
Well, I was a DJ for a while. So, Mikey, you did have a big announcement you wanted to make about somebody that came over and you had a conversation with.
Yeah, I just want to let the Hundy Peas know that if they're interested at all in this. So what happened was on Monday, Ben Johnson dropped by. And... Ben Johnson, 979 in Seoul, and of course stripped of his medal and his world record.
Fucked over.
Yeah, so he sat right here, and we talked. We talked for 100 minutes, where I asked him about everything, looked him in the eyes, and we had a real deep chat, unedited, 100 minutes with Ben Johnson. If that's at all of interest to anybody, that was Monday on Toronto Mike, so I just wanted to shout it out.
And give us a highlight. What did he say about doping and cheating and being ripped off?
Oh, well, in a nutshell, he's got some theories on, because he was cheating. Like he thinks, like everybody else was cheating in that final. But the steroid he got caught for was not the steroid he was taking, and he had clearance. Like he had stopped taking it before it would be picked up by the test, because they all knew how to game the system. So he was set up to fail, and he's got some theories on the American agenda and everything. He was set up because Carl Lewis was
the guy, yeah.
Yeah, and he was doped up too. They know that.
Oh, this was an adult wearing braces. Like often that's because of human growth hormones and everything. So bottom line is, it's very interesting to hear. This is the philosophical question that we discuss. Can a guilty man be fucked over? You know what I mean? Like, can he be done dirty when he's guilty?
Yeah.
Well, I think, when everybody you're racing against is just as guilty.
Exactly. In
then
that
it
context.
becomes a story. Then it becomes...
Right, but they were never,
but if he were the only guilty one, then he can't be fucked over. But and that's what I was going to say. In a world where all of them were doping...
Also, if you knew, let's say, you knew Freddie P murdered his neighbor because he didn't get those A&W
passes for sure, fucker.
So you knew, like we knew this secretly. We didn't want to rat out Freddie, but we knew he murdered his neighbor. Yeah. And then somebody set him up, and he was found guilty of murdering somebody else. But he didn't murder that guy, but he did murder this other guy. So it's like he's going to jail for murder, and he is a murderer, but he was hosed by the system because
it was the wrong murder. Yeah. No, it's a great point.
It's great you had Ben Johnson. We had him on our, what was it, Howard? Probably. So that happened in 88. Probably the mid-90s we had Ben on our show, remember?
Yep.
That's when he was running. I think that was a promo for running against a horse.
Yeah, he was racing a horse
or
at the time.
something.
Yeah.
That's one little thing, though. Just one
Did you talk about that? Did you talk about him racing horses?
No, we did talk about the cheetah campaign because he Frank D'Angelo and I cheated.
Right.
But here's an interesting thing I'll say. I only knew Ben from like the news back in the late 80s and the Dublin Inquiry, and I remember Ben Johnson as a stutterer. Like when I think of when I listen to Ben in my head, he stutters, and this is something he did. But I sat here unedited for 100 minutes and heard zero stutters. Like, this man does no longer stutters.
How old is he now?
62.
He's 62. Where is he at? Do you think, like, is he okay, like, financially?
Well, his goal is to make enough money that he can return to the parish he grew up in Jamaica and retire and die there. Like, so basically, his goal is to move back to where he was, because he was like in 12 or 13 when he came to Canada.
Right.
Okay.
He wants to go back to Jamaica.
Right.
So he's just saving money, and he's going to go back there and live out his remaining years.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing as Fred. Is he okay, or did he come over like Stafford and ask you for a sandwich?
Although, no,
he did give him a lasagna from Palmer.
Speaking of Stafford, I remember back in those days, I think Mike did a bit because he was very funny.
Yeah.
The day after, it was, Canadian Ben Johnson wins gold. And I think the day after the doping thing, he said, Jamaican Ben Johnson has been found guilty of doping.
Okay, Mike, well, that's, if you want to listen to the full interview, it's at Toronto Mic'd. Next week, we're doing another full slate of shows. It's a lot for us.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. So Darren Frost returns to the program on Tuesday.
Yeah, man.
And then Tony Clement on Wednesday. So a couple of good guests lined up. And we look forward to seeing you Monday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern.
Yes, indeed. And again, thanks to this dude that we had on, Jason. That was very interesting, as we like to say here on the program. Dan Duran, we appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I was going to mention earlier in the show we were talking about the top 50 bars in North America, and that Toronto had 3 of them. Mm-hmm. Lisa's son, Jonathan, is here, and he was just chatting with him during my break there. And he's been to 2 of the 3. He knows the managers at one of them.
Cool.
And the other, which is Club Mordecai or something like that, and the other one's Civil Liberties you're talking about. Yeah. Their thing is that you can't order a drink there. You talk with a bartender and he asks or she asks you what it is that you like and what spirits you're big on and then they come up with a drink for you.
And let me guess, they charge you $37.50 for it.
Probably. It's a little small kind of.
I'm sure
it's not one of these massive, huge bars that I was imagining with pumping sound systems and stuff. It's a smaller kind of.
Well, very cool. Bar. Thank you for that research, Dan Uran. Dan Uran. Okay, well, that's it then. That's enough of us. Thanks, Mike, for tracking down that dude for me and everyone else. Oh, by the way, Dan.
Yeah.
I think it's only fair to insert our new studio name on this extra. Do you not think so?
I totally agree. This is the time to do it, so it should be a Thursday to Thursday kind of renewed
certainly
after the email. So
certainly
a new theater name will become
every week
next Thursday after
until I can sell it. And once I sell it, forget the listeners. All right.
This episode is okay. Right, sorry. Are we done now?
All right.
You started the music. I'm supposed to talk, right?
No, I was just writing you. So here we go.
Oh, I see. Okay.
All right.
This episode of Humble and Fred was brought to you by the Retirement Sherpa, the Cheapers Plan, Boron One, Bodog, and Lender's Choice Mortgages. For contests and comments, we read all of our emails. Humble and Fred at humbleandfredradio.com. Humble and Fred at humbleandfredradio.com. Tell us what you think. And you can also subscribe. You can rate an episode, share it with your friends. Get it out there. We would like more people into us. For Humble and Fred, from the Jennifer Kelly Zoom Theater, I'm Dan Duran. And remember, keep your hockey expectations low so you can be surprised if there is a win, but okay with a loss. So you can enjoy every goddamn day.
Pulling out jobs and jamboree handouts, 2 turntables and a microphone, bottles and cans, or just clap your hands, or just clap your hands. Where's that?